Fire Emblem has been in a weird place for the last 10 years. Ever since the game that saved the series itself has undergone some significant changes. Fire Emblem Engage sees the series return to its roots in some forms. It is both one of the best Fire Emblem games I've played, while also being one of the worst. So without further ado, this is my review of Fire Emblem Engage. To give you a good idea of where this review is coming from, I'm going to talk a little bit about my history with the series first. My first Fire Emblem game was Awakening. I've played every single one since then, including the mobile game, and I did try to go back and play Fire Emblem 7, but I never managed to finish it. In short, I've really only played a handful of these games. That being said, the feel of each of the games I've played is weirdly different. Awakening feels like it leaned a bit more into being both a tactics game and adding an emphasis on story and social elements. Fates felt wildly experimental. It showed the potential detriment of trying to write 3 different storylines, and none of them wound up being very good in my opinion. And the definitive route, Revelations, is one of my least favorite ones in terms of story and gameplay. It leaned too hard into the success of Awakening, basically taking a lot of the social elements and expanding on those, whether putting them in the game made sense or not. Shadows of Valentia had a very strong narrative, with good enough focus on the character development that made me like each character in that game. But I felt like the gameplay suffered due to the larger scale of the maps, and also Three Houses was the series finally figuring out how to do multi-route stories, albeit with one route feeling kind of shafted, but Three Houses was overall pretty good. Though I feel like the gameplay wound up suffering a little bit, and the visuals were, well, not the best. And since now all of that's out of the way, we're going to move on to talking about Fire Emblem Engage.
Shine on! Emblem of Beginnings!
Strategy and tactics are the backbone of Fire Emblem's gameplay. However, I feel like with the last 2 entries of the series, there was more of a priority on freedom to build the units however you want, as opposed to having specific weapon types and the need to vary up your compositions. Engage brings back the main thing that kind of removed this, which is the weapon triangle. Essentially the rock, paper, scissors mechanic for Fire Emblem. It's a little weird that I'm happy to see this back, since I didn't really mind that it was gone in the last 2 games, but it does actively encourage me to build different characters and different classes, instead of just pushing all my units to a single weapon type because punching is funny.
You're in my sight!
Again, this is my own decision, but my point still stands. There's no disadvantage for me purely running one weapon type in the other games. This game also brings back the capping levels at 20 and sometimes 40, as opposed to Three Houses, which allowed you to hit 99. Once you hit 20, you change classes to gain new skills and so forth. And I doubt this changes a lot, but it's very much a system that's nice to see return. A lot of the mechanics in Engage feel like it's a return to form, but it doesn't necessarily mean that nothing is added either.
The Fire Emblem.
As the title states, the main new mechanic of this game is Engage.
Now, as one! Emblem Engage!
It basically allows your units to merge with the emblem they have equipped. The 12 emblems in this game are characters from previous titles, each one with their own unique attributes that can be transferred from character to character. Initially, I thought this mechanic was either going to be way too strong or underwhelmingly weak, but it's actually surprisingly well balanced. In the early game, you can try to abuse Engage a lot, but as the game progresses, if you become too reliant on it, it'll get tough to get past all the levels later. Every emblem has their own unique abilities, as I stated before, which makes pairing them properly very important. They even give characters weapons when they're equipped. For example, if you equip Sigurd onto a character who uses bows, you'll still get the option to use a lance while you're engaged with him. As for each emblem being different, Marth offers tools for higher damage output, Celica can teleport you around the map and unleash strong attacks, and Micaiah will sacrifice her own health to heal your team. In short, Engage offers transferable playstyles, which allows you to further customize and build your team. It's a mechanic that feels well thought out, and doesn't just feel like fan service bait, even though it kind of is. So I've been praising the gameplay a lot, now I'm going to kind of poke on the story and the writing of this game, because that's the worst part. The main thing that does take a hit in this game is its narrative. Where Three Houses and other Fire Emblem titles had well-crafted narratives that made you care for the characters and made you invested in what happens next, Engage's story is not that good. The game does make itself clear, though, that taking this narrative seriously is not something you should be doing. I mean, the opening itself is the most Saturday morning cartoon, 4Kids dub stuff I've heard from a Fire Emblem game. I feel like it's very clear that we're not meant to take this narrative seriously at all. It's incredibly predictable and generic. In most narratives, there are events that occur that are supposed to cause tension and conflict. But in this game, that kind of event is solved immediately in the next scene. So you'll have tension for about 5 seconds, you go to the next scene, tension's gone. Sometimes even in the same scene, the tension is just immediately lost. I also think that being able to name a Lear is dumb. This is a barely customizable protagonist with their own personality. They did not need to be nameable. It basically forces characters to avoid saying your name so that you're awkwardly referred to as the Divine Dragon.
Oh, I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm the Divine Dragon.
Again, if you don't take the story seriously, then it doesn't really matter, but I sure wish that I didn't have to name the main character and that the other characters would just call him or her a Lear. A lot of the social elements in this game are kind of downplayed a little bit. The support conversations are generally short and sweet, and the newly added bond conversations between playable characters and the emblems are really just one line on each side. While there is a huge volume of these support and bond conversations, more than any of the games in the past I believe, they're much more compact and toned down. So if you're into Fire Emblem for the narratives and the social elements, I think you might be disappointed in this one. That said, the game does kind of expand on the hangout monastery experience. The Somniel is your base of operations. It feels reminiscent of the monastery in Three Houses, My Castle and Fates, and also Aether Resort from Heroes. In fact, I feel like a lot of this game actually is kind of reminiscent to Heroes. Almost so much for me to say that this game might be Heroes fully realized as a AAA title, without the interesting narrative. But the Somniel offers a ton of extra activities like taking care of animals, working out for temporary stat boosts, cooking and eating with allies, and just a lot of other things, and it's definitely the best realized version of this in a Fire Emblem game because it concentrates everything down. One of the issues I had with the monastery in Three Houses is that it's just too big. There's so much room to move around, and I get that it's for a world-building perspective as this is a huge monastery, but it's just so unnecessary because there honestly isn't that much to do, and you're just spending too much time running from point A to point B. Ultimately, the Somniel is the best realized version of this kind of thing in a Fire Emblem game. And on the one hand, I'm okay with this outcome, but on the other, I kinda wish Fire Emblem could have good gameplay and a good story. It feels like either one has to come or the other, but it's so obvious that they're capable of both, so I hope one day we can get another game that does have both of those qualities. Engage's story is ultimately pretty corny, and if you don't take it too seriously, I think you'll find the experience enjoyable at best. If there's anything to praise this game over, it's definitely the visuals. Without a doubt, this is the best Fire Emblem has ever looked. When this game was first showed, I saw a lot of people complaining about how anime the game looked, and I thought that was kind of funny considering the fact that Fire Emblem has been anime since the beginning of time. Anyways, the art style is just so vibrant and colorful. It feels like everything stands out, especially those CG cutscenes, they're beautiful. The music isn't too shabby either, but I didn't really find myself remembering a lot of the tracks. I like the homages to the older games. But the visuals really are just so eye-catching.
The Divine One looked right at me!
By far, this game exceeded my expectations and underperformed on them as well. I'm a little disappointed that the story is kind of bumbling and generic and corny, but at the same time, it just has such fantastic gameplay that it feels like I'm kind of just forgiving the story issues because the game is just so much fun to play. It's a visually stunning title that delivers well on being its own game, while also being a game that kind of celebrates the series in some capacity. I mean, you know for sure that they brought these characters back for some fan service. So we're wiping the tier list clean, and we're dropping Fire Emblem Engage right here. And what do you think of Engage? Your first impressions? Or maybe you haven't bought it yet and you're on the fence about it? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and subscribe to the channel for more things JRPG related. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.